I quit regular life and became a writer so I'd never have to get up earlier than 9 a.m. And here I am at 9 a.m. talking about the International Booker Prize. I can't see straight. The International Booker Prize is a really big deal for us at Books and Bow because most of what we cover is international literature and translation. However, I am feeling a little embarrassed by the International Booker Longlist because I've only read 2 of the books on it. And that really, really surprised me. Yeah, I have my own wish list. Everyone has their own wish list, what they want to see on the long list. And none of the books that I wished for are on it. That does not mean that it's a bad list. That doesn't mean I think it's a bad list. It really just makes me feel embarrassed that I've heard of a lot of these books and never got around to reading them, and others I have just never heard of, and I'm really surprised by myself, I guess. But it's still a really good list in terms of diversity from what I can see. I've seen a book from Palestine, a book from Kenya, a book from China. We'll get to the one from China, actually. There's a decent range. I don't think we've seen a Kenyan book on the list before. And there's a lot of Palestinian literature that I really like, and unfortunately, this particular Palestinian book I haven't read. And again, I feel silly because it was one that I really should have read and was excited to read and is from a publisher that I adore. Anyway, this is a bit of a downer, it's just because I feel embarrassed. Let's go through the list and see what we've got. Let's start off with that aforementioned Chinese novel. This is I Live in the Slums by Kan Shu, translated by Karen Ganant and Chenza Ping. I like Kan Shu. I really liked her novel Love in the New Millennium, and I didn't know that this novel existed. I don't know when it came out. It's published by Yale University Press. I had no idea I Live in the Slums existed. I saw the cover when the Booker Prize list was revealed in a little video on Twitter, and I thought, oh, that looks great. Oh, it's Kan Shu. I know her books, I like her books, and I had no idea this existed. Nobody told me. I never saw anyone talk about it on social media. No other writers, YouTubers, whatever. Is it out? I don't even know if it's out. I just feel ridiculous. How did I not know? I'm a fan of hers. I like her work. I'm glad it's on the list because she's great and she deserves to be on this list as a writer. I just haven't read this book. I have to now. I'm going to go out and get it. This next one's really exciting, to be fair, and it's one that I really, really want to read as well. Again, it's very strange that I didn't know it even existed because it's published by Pushkin Press. We work really closely with Pushkin Press. We always know what's coming out. They send us a lot of books, and we've covered a lot of their books. I love what they do. I've been meaning to do a video just dedicated on them as a publisher, and this is a book of theirs that I just didn't know existed. But it sounds really fantastic. It's called At Night All Blood is Black. It's written by David Diop. It's French, and he is French-Senegalese. So the novel is written in French, but he is a French-Senegalese writer, and the story follows the stories of the Senegalese who fought for the French in World War One. I love literature set during wartime, as long as it's good. A lot of it is not. And this sounds fantastic. The title it's very clear what the title is alluding to, and it's a Pushkin book. I just can't believe I haven't even heard of it. How did that happen? At Night All Blood is Black, by the way, was translated by Anna Moshavakis, who's a translator I have not come across before. I feel like I'm in a different universe right now. There you go, I close the curtains. I don't know if that's better or worse. The next book I have read. I have read it, I have done a written review on it, and I was a big fan of it. It's a book that comes from Georgia, the country, not the state. And Georgia's a country that I'm really excited to visit. Jess has talked a lot about going to see Georgia. The people are awesome. The culture's amazing. The food is fantastic. The mountains are beautiful. It's a really peaceful place. So it's cool to see a book from Georgia on this list. It's also a book that I have read and enjoyed, as I said, and it's published by Peyrene Press, or Piren Press. I actually have no idea how you say it. Their name is taken from this Greek well of eternal youth or something from Greek mythology. I did look it up. They're a really cool press, and they exclusively publish books from Europe in translation. So it has to be from Europe, and it has to be under 200 pages long, which is such an interesting way to approach things. And as someone who reads so much literature and always prefers my novels to be like under 300 pages, I really appreciate that. Anyway, the book is called The Pearfield, and the author has a very, very long Georgian name. I'm going to put it here because I'm not going to attempt to pronounce it and embarrass myself and feel like a moron. The Pearfield was translated by Elizabeth Highway, who did a really, really great job. The Pearfield is fantastic. It tells the story of this orphanage with this 18-year-old girl who's just grown up at this orphanage and kind of looked after all the other orphans at the edge of Tbilisi. And she is getting into relationships with people, sexual drama, growing up in a weird situation, learning to trust and not trust people. Leela was also abused by her teacher, one of her teachers, and the blurb says that if there's one thing that she knows for certain is that this teacher must die. The orphanage that she grows up in, I've called it an orphanage, but it's actually referred to as like a school for idiots, a school for mentally disabled kids, however you want to very, very poorly frame and explain it. But really it's just kind of a place for parents to dump their children. So it's a kind of sad situation, it's a kind of difficult and tumultuous place. But it is a book that's really, really full of heart and a little bit of wit and a lot of anger. There's also a boy that she has kind of taken under her wing, and he's been promised a life in the US, and she is responsible for him, and so she's kind of watching how this unfolds with beady eagle eyes. There's a lot that goes on in a book that's under 200 pages, and I really, really enjoyed it. And just to have a Georgian novel on this list is really, really cool, and The Pearfield is a really great novel, so yay. Okay, this one is really embarrassing. I did not see this coming. I feel really stupid about this one. This is called The Dangers of Smoking in Bed. It's written by Mariana Enriquez, and it's translated by Megan McDowell. It's published by Granta, who I'm a big fan of, love what Granta does. I have been meaning to read this book for quite some time. I have a friend from Chile who's been telling me to read this book for a while. I've gone on record talking about how much I love Argentinian literature, and this is an Argentinian book of short stories. My friend from Chile read it in the original Spanish and told me that I have to read it as soon as it's translated into English, and then it was translated into English and I didn't get to it. And I read a lot of books from Argentina, just not this one. What the hell am I doing? So, The Dangers of Smoking in Bed by Mariana Enriquez is a collection of surreal short stories. I haven't read it yet, so I can't talk much about it. It's really cool to see a short story collection on this list. I'm so glad that there's a book from Argentina on this list. The cover is stunning, it's gorgeous, it's beautiful, and the stories sound fantastic. I cannot believe that the one book from Argentina that came out recently that I haven't read, The Dangers of Smoking in Bed, is the one that's longlisted for the Booker. I feel like someone is working against me. There's another book from Pushkin Press on this list, which is really cool, and this one I have read. I read it like a year ago, maybe even more, at a time where I was very, very busy with review copies, and although I read it, I never actually wrote about it or did a video about it or anything, but it is a really, really good book. It's not really... I don't think it's not challenging or dark enough to appear on a list like this. Quite often, the books that appear on lists like this, especially this one, are quite often very dark, dreary, dismal literary fiction that is, wonderful, often masterpieces, but very bleak. And this one just doesn't really fit that bill somehow. I can't really explain why, but it's still a really great book, and it's cool to see it on here. I didn't expect to see it on here. Anyway, the book is called When We Cease to Understand the World, and it's written by Benjamin Labatu. I think that's how you say it, I'm not sure. And it's from Spanish. He grew up in the Netherlands. He spent time in Rotterdam and The Hague. I love The Hague. I spent a lot of time there myself. Great town. And now he lives in Santiago, Chile, so I guess it's a Chilean book. And it's a book about science, mathematics, and war. It's framed around Einstein himself, as well as Schrödinger and Heisenberg, titans of physics and mathematics. It's a strange book. It's an absorbing book. It's not particularly long. Really, really well translated. I remember it being incredibly well translated. Did I mention it was Adrian Nathan West? He was the translator. I don't know if I mentioned that. Again, this is the only book of his in translation that I've actually read. And yeah, this is a great book. This is a real Pushkin book. Pushkin have a certain theme and style that I can't really put my finger on. I think the way that they do their cover art, the books that they choose, the translators, it all comes together to create this rainbow of sorts. It often feels like a book published by Pushkin is going to feel like a rainbow of emotions, usually quite positive, peppered with dark themes, and usually very, very gorgeous cover art. There's something rainbow-like about Pushkin. That's the only way I can really explain their books. But if they put it out, I usually read it, and I think it's cool to see this on here, especially because it's a book from Chile. This next book I am so excited to read. I didn't know it existed. I mentioned at the beginning that there was a book from Kenya on this list, and this is it. This is called The Perfect Nine. It's written by a Kenyan author who currently lives and works in California as a professor. I'm not going to try and say his name. It's here, and it sounds like exactly what I want to read right now. It is a blend of folklore and allegory, as the blurb says, and it tells the story of a couple who flee war and turmoil and settle at the foot of Mount Kenya. They have 9 daughters, the perfect 9, and these suitors come to try to marry these daughters, and the parents send them out on these magical quests to find things, and they go on an adventure together, the daughters and the suitors, and the daughters must choose for themselves who they want to marry after they complete these quests. It sounds great. It sounds like Greek mythology. It sounds like a lot of fun, and I really, really want to read it, so I'm going to be adding this to my list. I've got at least 3 books on this list that I'm going to go out and buy immediately, and this is definitely one of them. It's really cool to see a book from Kenya on this list. African literature in general is so often overlooked, and it's great to see this on here. This next one is another book that I don't know anything about, but it is Danish. I've spent a lot of time in Denmark. I love Denmark. I love Danish people. It's an awesome place, so I'm immediately interested on that alone, although I do not know the author Olga Raven and her book The Employees. Don't know it. Don't know her. She's a very young writer, and she's had her works published in Politiken, which is a big publication. And the translator, Martin Aitken, is a big deal. And from what I can tell, The Employees looks like it's a piece of speculative science fiction set on a ship in the 22nd century, like a spaceship that's just picked something up from a planet. It sounds fantastic. Again, when I saw the cover, I was like, no, I've definitely never seen this before. But I am going to read this. This is another one to add to my collection. More Danish literature. More speculative science fiction. Awesome. Last year's International Booker Prize was actually won by a Dutch author, and we have another Dutch author on this list. I was in the Netherlands when the winner was announced. That was a pretty cool feeling, and I still haven't gotten around to reading the winner of last year. I was trying to make my way through whatever parts of the shortlist I hadn't read yet, and I was just about to read the winner when the winner was announced, and then there was loads of talk about how darkly depressing that book is and how people were struggling to get through it even though it's not that long, and suddenly I was like, maybe now's not the time. Pandemic, mental health, can't do it. This one is called Summer Brother by Jaap Robben. It was translated from Dutch by David Doherty, and the author has written a lot of children's books in the past, and this was his first book for adults. I haven't read it. Quite often authors who write a lot of books for children and then move into books for adults maintain a lot of that vibrancy that comes with children's literature, so I'll be interested to see how this reads and what the tone is like, but I don't know anything about it at this moment. This next one sounds fantastic. I love Germany. I love so much about Germany and German art, and I haven't read enough German literature, and this is another example. This is a piece of German literature. This is An Inventory of Losses by Judith, it's too early, I can't say Judith Shalansky. It's translated by Jackie Smith. It is exactly what it sounds like, an inventory of losses. It is a book about different things throughout history that have been lost. Buildings and places and things that have, for whatever reason, been lost to history. It sounds interesting, and I really need to read a lot more modern German literature. I'm a huge fan of Hans Fallada, and I'm usually better at reading contemporary fiction more than classic fiction, and yet when it comes to German literature, it's basically the other way around, for whatever reason. But anyway, I need more modern German literature, and this is it. This is one that I feel particularly embarrassed about. I think this is probably, this and the Kanshou novel, these are the two that I am particularly embarrassed by. This is Minor Detail. It is, as I've already mentioned, a book from Palestine. It's written by Adania Shibli, and I've read quite a few books from Palestine, and they are always fantastic. I don't think I've ever read a Palestinian author who didn't blow me away. They are amazing writers. The Sea Cloak by Nuruz Kamut, Jokes for the Gunman, That was an incredible collection of short stories. I loved Jokes for the Gunman. I'm a big fan of Palestinian literature, and I haven't read Minor Detail, and it's published by Fitzcarraldo Editions, and I read a lot of the books that Fitzcarraldo put out. In fact, they put out so much good stuff every year that I struggle to keep up. But I haven't read this one, and I don't know anything about it. And I've seen a lot of people in the last 2 days leading up to this list's announcement saying, I hope Minor Detail makes the list. And I was thinking, yeah, me too. I haven't read that one. A friend of mine put up on Twitter a big list of what she wanted to see on this list, and I'd read every single book that she mentioned except for this one, and all the other books that she mentioned did not make it to this list, except for the one that I hadn't read, Minor Detail. This is another Fitzcarraldo book. It is one of their white cover books, not one of their blue cover books, which typically means that it is non-fiction or memoir in some way. From what it says here, the book actually blends fiction, memoir, and essay all together, which is a very Fitzcarraldo thing. It's a Russian book, and I haven't read it. Shocking. In Memory of Memory. It's a Russian Jewish novel by Maria Stepanova, and it tells the story of a century's worth of persecution of her and her family over the course of the 20th century. That's pretty much all I know, but I do not read enough contemporary Russian literature, so I will be checking this one out pronto. In Memory of Memory, by the way, was translated by Sasha Dugdale. This one's from Sweden. Now, I like Sweden. I've been to Sweden. I like Swedish people. I like Swedish music very much. I don't typically like Swedish literature. If a book is from Sweden, I usually don't enjoy it. I can't explain why. I just don't usually care for the subjects of Swedish novels. I don't know why. Every time a book comes up and it's from Sweden, it often reads in a similar way, and I look at the blurb and I go, yep, that sounds like a Swedish novel. Oh my god, is this prejudice? I hope it's not prejudice. But yeah, this is a Swedish novel. It's called Wretchedness. It's by Andrei. It's translated by Nicholas Smalley, whose translations I've never read before. Obviously, I have not read this book because apparently, according to this list, I've never read a novel in my life. It's published by And Other Stories, who are a really great independent press, really cool publisher, so that's great. And looking at the blurb, it does sound like a Swedish novel indeed. I don't know if I'm going to read this one, but by this point I just sound like I hate Sweden, and that's not true. I love Sweden, so maybe I should read it just to buck my own trend. This last one sounds really good, and again, I had no idea this book existed. It is a French novel, and it is called The War of the Poor, and it tells the story of a revolution that a lot of people don't know much about. It was an uprising in the 16th century that was known as the Protestant Reformation. I didn't know about it, and I think the book banks on you not knowing about it. The cover is fantastic, and it's written by Eric Vuillard, and it's translated by Mark Polizzotti. And it sounds great. The description here just says that it's a really short book and it details this 16th century uprising. Now, the French love uprisings and I love them for it. And I don't know much about this, but this definitely sounds like my kind of a book and I'm really excited to get to it. I think I'm going to end up now going out and buying probably 5 of the books that I've mentioned on here. I've read 2 of them and I was going to get to a few of them anyway. And there's now a few more that have really piqued my interest. I need to read The War of the Poor. It sounds great. And I definitely need to go out and finally get The Dangers of Smoking in Bed. Oh my god, I cannot believe I still haven't read that. And the fact that there's a Kanshou novel that I just did not know about. I need to read that book as soon as possible. So yeah, this is a bit of a weird video because I didn't know half of these books existed. And then there were lots that I did know and never actually read myself for one reason or another. Anyway, this isn't about me. This is a celebration of literature. And this is a pretty good selection of literature from around the world. I'm really surprised to not see any books from Japan or Korea on this list, but Japanese and Korean literature are the ones that I talk about the most, so that's definitely just my bias. I always want to see Japanese and Korean literature on any list. I am really glad to see a Chinese novel on here. I'm thrilled to see a Chinese novel. I'm thrilled to see a Kenyan novel, a Palestinian novel, a book from Chile. This is really great. This is a good range of literature. And a book from Argentina, my other favourite country's literature. So I can't complain. And I'm not complaining. I just feel embarrassed. This is a good range of books, and it has inspired me to do a little bit of shopping. That's good. I like shopping when I can afford it. So let me know in the comments if you've read any of the books that I haven't read, because I need recommendations, I need people to tell me more about them. Also, let me know if you're disappointed, let me know if you're elated, let me know what you wanted to see on the list that didn't make it. That's always an interesting discussion. And if you haven't already, please subscribe for books.